And the reason my piss was that colour was because of the Barocca. You're listening to the Beat Motel Podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist, boxy scrutux, angry flap, and filth biscuits. And we don't often bleep those words out, apart from because we're not complete assholes. But if you understand that and you like music, then listen on.
But Andrew, Barocca shouldn't turn your piss purple.
Yeah, no, I didn't say what colour it was, did I? Oh, my headphones are packing up. How are you, Sam?
I'm okay. It's a very sunny day here in Helsinki, and I'm going to go for a bike ride after this.
Look at this. Look.
Oh, he's got
Oh,
lycra
that's my
on.
Pants. I was going to try and show you my legs. I forgot that I've got kind of the type of underwear I use. Just to start a music podcast by showing the audience your underwear. Good start. Good start.
Well, hopefully people are listening, and therefore they can imagine it in their mind, and it'll be even sexier than the real life. Because the imagination is where the real sex goes on, isn't it?
The genital theatre of the mind.
The genital theatre of the mind.
That's the name of the next These Are End Times album.
That's a good grindcore album title.
You beat me to it. I'm listening to a podcast called We Dig Music on the last couple of days because some of the episodes are like 2.5 hours long. And there's a brilliant bit that they came up with a grindcore band or a metal band called Horrifying Horse Death, which I thought was quite like. Dear. Right, shall we have a riff of the week?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm a good guy for a gal, so won't you look my palm over? I got time for a chat, so won't you tell me my future? I'm gonna break down at 50.
Who was that, Sam?
That was the Rentals with the song Friends of P. And
that's just the letter P, not as in urine.
Yeah, that track's from the 1995s. And it's by Matt Sharp, who was the bassist on the first two albums of Weezer, and that's why you can hear quite strong Weezer overtones. And he left, I think he was sort of part of the real creative team behind Weezer alongside Rivers Cuomo. And I've sort of belatedly sort of started listening to the Rentals, and they sort of, you know, that thing of like the chemistry between two people. Like, the Rentals are great, and Weezer are great, and Matt Sharp in the Weezer is astonishingly good. And he was sort of like, just listening to it and not watching any documentaries, not reading anything around the Weezer, really, because I can't be bothered. I'm not that interested in them, but I love the first two albums. But it's like he was the sort of the cheeky chaos that made the band interesting.
You get the in films it's called the Manic Pixie Girl.
Yeah, he's the Manic Pixie Girl. And I have to say, the first Rentals album and the last one, both great albums. Very diverse, unfocused in many ways. Even if the last album was the newest, the Rentals album is sort of a concept album.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great. It's just great, sort of, I would say, great Californian pop. Fantastic, great addition of the girl vocals rather than, which is what I think he was always trying to do in Weezer, those sort of like high-pitched vocals that he did. If you listen to the first two Weezer albums, he's doing all the falsetto stuff. And when he gets his own band, he just introduces a female singer, and she's great, and it works really well. And it's, I recommend people go out and listen. It's great. Sort of, if you like that early Weezer style, it has more of that weirdly, it has more of that charm than anything Weezer have done since.
I was very surprised when I first heard the ooh, ooh, ooh. I thought, that doesn't sound like something Sam would like. And then it started, and I was like, this definitely sounds like something Sam would like. Oh, this sounds like Weezer. So I'm quite amazed it's the bassist of Weezer. That sort of, It kind of makes it all right for it to sound like Weezer, unlike all the
Yeah.
many bands since that sound like Weezer. At least he's got a bit of ownership over it.
Yeah, and part of me sort of thinks of, was he going, particularly with that first album, was he going to Rivers Cuomo and going, look, I can write this stuff as well. Why don't you give me some songwriting credits? And Cuomo refused to do it, and they sort of fell out around songwriting credits.
Is that what actually happened, or is this your supposition?
This is my novel.
the romantic novel you're working on about the early Weezer.
Yeah, the sex scenes between Rivers Cuomo and Matt Sharp are quite violent. It's all about who's going to be daddy. What's the term? Who's a topper and who's a bottom?
Who's Arthur or Martha? I'm quite excited.
Two very popular kids' names at the moment.
I'm quite excited to find out that they exist actually, and I'll tell you for why. I set up a proper stereo for my daughter, my 12-year-old. Izzy, her. And it's because she's getting really into music, and Weezer she plays probably more than any other band, and she says Pinkerton is the best album.
She's right. Well done, Izzy.
But she was listening to
your father. He doesn't know anything.
She's listening to it on this tiny little Amazon Echo, and it kind of bothered me. And she came to the office, and I told her to. I had in my head that I had an old amplifier, like Separate's amplifier, somewhere in the office. So I was like, yeah, set about looking for it, and if you find it, you can have it. I mean, it was Easter, actually, and that's far more interesting than doing an Easter egg hunt, I think. Find the vintage amplifier. And she found two. I'm genuinely surprised by it. I was like, where the fuck did that come from? I genuinely can't remember. It's like a 1982 Toshiba or something. So I thought, that was about the age I got a proper stereo, like got a separate stereo. And I got my dad's, this sounds odd, it was a Realistic amp. And Realistic was like the in-store brand for Tandy or Radio Shack in America. So it wasn't great. It caught fire eventually because of all the raging metal. It wasn't any raging metal, but it caught fire.
All the raging hormonal indie.
Raging hormonal indie. That is a genre. Oh my god, I could name bands in that genre.
Another grindcore album as well.
So I put a shout out on Facebook saying, if anyone got any hi-fi speakers they don't want, because people always have. It's like one of those things that people don't want to part with, but also aren't using. And friend Fanny, from the bassist of Red Flag, had these massive 70s Akai speakers.
Nice.
And another friend, Matthew Shenton, hello Matt, if you're listening, gave me some speakers as well. So we had a lovely day rigging up a proper hi-fi system for her, and it was
fantastic.
a real heartwarming moment because she listens to music all the time.
And now, how many times do you bang on the ceiling with the brush and go, turn it down?
This is kind of where I'm getting to. I realised there was no point in getting her like a CD player because she hasn't got any CDs, although she does want them bizarrely. I've got
retro hipster.
Yeah, I've got loads, but
I've got loads. I could send her if you want like if she gets a CD player, I can send her shitloads of compilations.
Like a starter kit.
Yeah, like a starter kit. But like, here is your dad's friend's teenage shit.
Yeah. I've got a lot of stuff. Like each time I look up at my CDs, I think I don't know if I don't want to get rid of them. They're not in the way. They're not causing any harm.
Oh well, mine are in storage, and I don't know. I don't listen to compilations really.
It's the lack of choice that's. I'm going to put that down as an idea actually, because I think compilations is quite a nice one. So she wants a record player, which is lovely, but it does trouble me because the only records in the house are mine. And yeah, that's cool, but also it's.
Has she discovered that you haven't sort of like there's another aspect, which is the joy of sort of secondhand record shop crate digging, which you can't go in for something specific. You have to go in for something that sort of an idea of something like things you're open to. And you just go and you sort of, it's easier. The problem with like the other record shops who like that do general rock and pop stuff is that those rock and pop sections are so big. What you need is that like really old man ones that do like, sort of punk and then hardcore punk and then modern emo punk and then, electro punk, and it's all separated out. So you go, I really don't want any keyboards today. I don't care. And you give her a tenner and say, try and get at least 2 albums out of that.
That's a really cool idea. She's been exposed to the crate digging thing a little bit because we're in a massive. There's like these warehouse charity shops around here now. The British High Street is now pound shops and charity shops and betting shops. There isn't anything else. But there's a real big warehouse one sort of on the outskirts of Ipswich. And she bought some records. They were like £3 for £1, but she bought them because she is decorating her room. So it's really interesting, the sort of the homage to vinyl that somebody who never had that exposure to it, it sort of seems alien, but very cool to me. So she will get a record player at some point, but because she streams everything from her phone, I bought her a little Bluetooth streaming device. It was like a tenner. It thing's incredible. But bizarrely, one of the features it brags about on Amazon is it starts off saying what connectors it's got, then it says it's Bluetooth, and it's also got near field connection. And then there's one sort of slide where it says full blood resurrection. It's listed as a feature of the device, full blood resurrection, which she's got a very macabre sense of humour, and that very, very much appealed to her. So when she was setting it up, you name the Bluetooth device, it's named as full blood resurrection. So on her phone it says now playing on full blood resurrection.
What streaming service does she use?
Apple Music, for a really good reason, because you and I both use Tidal.
Yeah.
And it's because when I pay for Apple Music for her and my wife, and it's because when we're all on the same streaming service, so when I was using Apple Music as well, they go through phases sometimes. They'll get really into musicals. Izzy's really into this completely age inappropriate musical cartoon called Has Been Hotel. It's got the C word in it a lot, and we had to have conversations with her about it. She bloody loves it. And it would completely fuck up my algorithm. So I actually pay for their subscription so that it doesn't soil my algorithm.
I need to look at something quickly, but I might have a suggestion for you on that front, but I'll send you a private message about it.
Cool. The other... Yeah, so the whole point I was getting to is that now there are massive speakers on the floor, and she hasn't got carpets. There are massive speakers on the floor playing Weezer all the time. So I'd quite like her to get into something else. It doesn't.
You put like you need to put a lot of people put like a big chunk of, you make like blue tack stands out of them, like big chunk on each corner.
Oh, really? I hadn't thought of that.
To separate it from the surface. So it deadens that.
Vibrations wouldn't go through, would they? No, they're on big bits of polystyrene at the moment. But we had a problem in the speakers that we got in the kitchen. They're up quite high, and they used to boom because they'd make the cupboards vibrate. But a friend of mine, who I probably shouldn't name for what I'm about to tell you, used to work on the London Underground as an engineer, and he said they have these really heavy rubber pads that they put underneath the tracks in places where it causes vibration pollution. So he gave me 2 of those, and I got the speakers on those. They are bloody great. So yeah. So after all of that, nice one. Thank you for giving me.
How are you, Andrew? Let's start the riff of the week. How are you, Andrew?
I am all right. Although a minute ago I thought I was going to fart, and then it just felt a little too hot, so I decided not to trust it. We have a guest in on this recording, apparently. I don't know who that is. Can you see it?
I think that was me trying to log in through another thing, but I quit the thing.
Right, let's move on to my riff of the week. That was... Oh, let's see if you know who that was. Who was that, Sam? You can probably piece back together my last few days of our conversations and guess who that was.
Weezer.
That was the Weezer other bassist. Actually, how many bassists has Weezer had? Because one of them died, didn't he? You don't know? I love the fact you love Weezer, basically know nothing about them and have no interest in finding out anything about them.
No, I think, yeah, I don't know. They were, yeah, I some things should be left a mystery, and Rivers Cuomo doesn't seem like that interesting a person. Unlike, say like Kurt Cobain or, there's something about the way that Rivers Cuomo dresses. You just don't think he's that interesting.
I like some... I know nothing about Weezer either, but there is one thing that I always found quite charming is that they were on tour and they played at some university in America, and he went, "Oh, I really like it here." So he left Weezer and did a degree in English or something, and then went back to Weezer afterwards. I don't know. That seems quite charming to me. That was Green Lung.
Ah, yeah. You said you'd gone I didn't know they had so much keyboard in there. That sounded great.
That was the thing that really appealed to me, because I never listen to a band when I'm going to go and see them if I've not heard of them before, and I thought I'll give them a go. And that throbbing Hammond organ sound is just such a brilliant thing to hear at a metal gig, because it does kind of growl and grind, and that's one of the things I like about Deep Purple. I like the fact that the keyboards and the guitars are kind of like fighting each other for dominance the whole time. So, interesting thing about Green Lung is the gig was astonishing. One of the best bands I've ever seen. There is a review, listeners. There is a review. The episode before this is a review of that, and I think Rocky summed it up best. He said, "Green Lung are like the sword if the sword were good," which I think is brilliant, and I like it. But that's
damning. Damning as well on the sword.
Oh yeah, God, you know what the man's like. Love you, Rocky. But it's weird because this type of metal, if metal is really, really obvious to me and I immediately grab onto it and immediately go, yes, I love this, the span of time for which I love it is quite brief. And I've heard that song maybe 4 or 5 times now and I'm already going off it. Whereas I think if I have to work for metal, then I tend to, it's with me for life kind of thing. But just such a good band. I mean, just quality, just really on it, and just brilliant playing, entertaining, everything, all cool.
Good.
So
great.
Let's get onto our theme now. This is the first theme that's been submitted to us by a listener.
Yes, thank you, listener.
So this was submitted, and I'm going to do an interesting thing. I'm going to give you his responses as well. So the theme is bands with longevity who don't turn into wank. I mean, that might not be what I actually call it, so that we don't get grey listed by Apple Music and whatever. But Matthew Burrows, who's a guitarist of Ecto Peach, sent in this theme, and I think it's really interesting. And as usual, you and I have probably both got completely different interpretations of it. So,
well, I went for 2 different variations, but there's a lot. There's actually I was looking at my sort of collection. I had a theory a few years ago, which is, apart from the bands that you really like, there's a maximum of about 2 or 3 albums of any one band that are brilliant. Like the bands that the music that you really, really dig, you'll dig a lot of, particularly if they prove to be interesting.
You're a lot more forgiving, aren't you?
Yeah, and the bands that really hit. And then there are bands that, you just need an album of, and that's it. And there are other people there are other people who will get that band and love all their stuff. And I'm sure there's someone who still listens to the Rolling Stones album that was put out last year, but I don't think there's that many of them. Whilst I think there's a lot of people who do go back and keep going back to the stuff they put in the 60s and 70s. And even if it's not for me, I don't care. And, I like, it's like the Weezer camp. There are 2 Weezer camps. There's the people who believe the first 2 albums are it. And then there's people who, and they're wrong, who think that they continue to produce some good stuff. And occasionally, I would say, admit that even, that one or two songs are pretty good since Matt Sharp left, but not a whole album is that good. I sort of, I found it, I was about to sort of go for NoFX, but then I haven't really listened to a NoFX album since War on Errorism, which is now almost 20 years old.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just gasping at that being 20 years old, but NoFX sort of never really changed that much.
No, and there's a weird lyric in one of the Fat Mike sang a great lyric, which is when did punk rock get so dull?
Mm.
And you go, well, Fat Mike, you're one of the reasons it got so dull.
Yeah, contributing factor there.
He's an interesting musician. He writes interesting music, but he got to a sound and he stuck to a sound and he stuck to it, and he fair enough. But he never really went, since he kicked on that, he never seemed to go that far out of his comfort zone. And then there are bands like, there are those bands like AC/DC and the Ramones who just stay the same and never sort of, and you go and see them live, and the only thing people really want to see is the first stuff in the first few albums. And one of those bands I've mentioned, I'd say, was one of them, but it was an interesting one to sort of philosophically sort of explore.
We've got on the long list of ideas that we keep, which is huge now. We've got bands that progress, bands that change, and I think some bands like NoFX, it'd be weird if they did like suddenly they went metal or they went techno or something. It doesn't have to be that extreme. Let's save that for another for another episode and play your first track.
But all they said was that they were very, very busy and they would try to see you later.
Who would that, Sam?
That was No Means No with Heaven is the Dust Beneath My Shoes. From their last album, All Roads Leads to Asphalt. And when I was thinking about this, they were the first band that came up that I thought, actually, I personally don't get their first two albums that much, which are Mama and Sex Mad.
Sex Mad.
Yeah. I don't know if I get Small Parts, Isolated and Destroyed, either the first three albums, but I know there are people who really, really like those albums. And then there's the Wrong sort of aspect, which is the sort of the point where I get really into them. And then, but the thing is that also their late 90s stuff. And then I was listening to this album, All Roads Lead to Asphalt, which is their last studio album back in 2006. And, they'd been going at that point, the two brothers had been going in that band since 1979. And they also had this other band, the Hanson Brothers, which I love.
Is that them? I didn't know that.
That's them doing just what, a Ramones core, because just have fun, I think. And I in the greater scheme of things, I don't think they've really done a dud album. I don't think they ever really stood in one place. I don't think they ever really, they had a very sort of, distinct signature that was sonic signature that is between the voice and the bass, and particularly the voice, the bass, and the drums, but also with the scratchy guitar, sort of doing embellishing things, I'd say, above and below the bass. But they never put out a dud album, but they never put out a boring album either. And that is pretty incredible over that period of time.
For such a small toolkit as well.
Yeah. And, they're one of the few alternative bands that they put out most of their stuff through Alternative Tentacles, they never signed to a major label. They always toured, and they did it the hard way, and they always did it. They always produced something that was, they're the thinking man's punk band.
I remember the first time you told me about No Means No, you were in my record shop. I can even remember where I was in the record shop when you told me about them, and I think it was you. Apologise if it wasn't. And I think you sort of went into the shop and you said you just asked me to put it on the stereo, and I did. And I can remember hearing it and go, "There's something in here which I find absolutely fascinating." And then a few years later, we saw them play at ATP in Minehead. And I remember thinking, there's something here that's absolutely fascinating. And I've just never actually dug into it. It's the same thing with the Minutemen. I know there's something there that massively appeals to me. I just need to actually set aside some time. Part of it is because I think bands like that friends really love, I kind of want to give them a proper go. I don't want to sort of, be listening to the album while I'm working or driving or something. I want to actually really think about the music and really properly absorb it.
Yeah,
because I think that as you get older, you don't sort of set aside the time to properly listen to music. I mean, we used to sit around and get stoned and listen to music 30 years ago. Sorry, Mum, if you're listening. And you'd talk about the music and really pay attention to it. And we get a bit of that when you and I meet up in person once a year and go and see bands. We get to properly listen to music then, because generally it'll just be me and you in your apartment. And you put music on and we listen to it and talk about it, which I absolutely love. So I want to love No Means No.
That capacity for repetition is something I sort of miss. That, like what you're talking about, Izzy has, my kid has it, Martin has it as well. You watch, I mean, for my stupidity, he's now really into SpongeBob, which I sort of love and hate at the same commercial. Yeah, it's crazy. There's an academic paper, quite bad academic paper, but academic paper saying it ruins kids' attention spans. It makes them ADHD. Which is...
Yeah, Izzy was never into it. I'm aware of the oeuvre, just never watched much of it.
Well, it's sort of, this was a paper back in like the early 2000s, and it was basically saying it's cutting too quick. It's not really sort of establishing, and you certainly have that ADHD aspect, but that sort of cutting in film has become sort of the norm, particularly in animation.
Woo kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of quick moves, a lot of quick sort of jokes and so on and so forth. But what I was going to say was, it's that capacity to, I've said this before, I used to put on a song on, when I was making cassette tapes for my bus home from school. I used to put on a song and obsess about it and just put it on like one side every other song.
No, you mentioned that before, and I think it's an incredible thing.
I would never do that now. I get so sick of it. I try to make these playlists for my cycling, and I need to consistently sort of update them or change them or just delete them and keep going new ones, because I just get I hear a song 3 times now and I'm sort of going, oh yeah, I know where this is going. And that's that thing of you learn to read. Your brain learns shortcuts into music, so you get less thrilled by it because your brain sort of can guess, does a better job at guessing what's going to come up.
I think that's the thing with me and Green Lung, actually.
To find a band, to find musicians and this is why, I think it's harder as musicians evolve for them to consistently surprise, because, they sort of, even classical composers sort of come up with a sort of certain level of a limit of their toolkit becomes sort of more and more exposed. When you're green, when you've got your first 2-3 albums, even maybe 4 albums, all that stuff is there for the taking. But when you're on your 6th album, your 8th album, your 10th album, people, like NoFX is a good example of this. You can sort of guess where the stuff is going. You can guess. And therefore, in a weird way, when it was fresh and it was fresh to them, it's actually more entertaining to listen to than their later stuff. When they're surprising themselves as well, that's always better to listen to when they're doing the sort of the same genre of tricks later on.
It's interesting. You read some interviews with bands, and bands are now like lifers. They're now like career bands, and you read interviews sometimes with bands that have been around for a long time, and sometimes the bands that were around in the 70s and on will admit that they didn't really figure out what they're doing. They didn't get their sound until the 5th or 6th album, which is amazing that bands last that long. The thing with repetition, there's a couple of things I've noticed recently. I listen to Six Music, so some songs I will get really into, but then once they drop out of rotation, I never think about them ever again, and it's a pleasant surprise when they do pop up. Some songs on the radio I've never liked, and I don't think I ever will. I have no fucking idea why Six Music's obsessed with Elastica. I can only assume one of the people who does the playlist at Six Music owns shares in the publishing company or something. Because they're why Elastica? They were such a blip and gone, and weren't even that interesting at the time. But they're just played fucking incessantly, and it will never make me like them. But in addition to Weezer, Izzy plays. It was 2 bands. It was a band called Lovejoy, who she now doesn't listen to because she found out something unpleasant about the singer, which is interesting to me because the whole, separating art from the artist, it appears for her that's a real issue. It's a real line in the sand for her. Like, wow. The other one, though, I'm starting to like, and I think it might be just because I've heard it so many fucking times. And it's a band called Mother Mother. I'll pull them up for Riff of the Week at some point. But I've heard it so many times through the floor or through the ceiling. But I'm starting to pick out why they're so interesting and how well produced and well thought out the songs are. But anyway, they're a new band. We're supposed to be talking about bands with longevity, so I ought to play my next track. And this episode, dear listener, there's quite a lot of variety. That is... go on. Do you want to have a guess?
It sounds like a lot of 90s Britpop.
That particular song does sound like... Yeah, I'll give you that. It does sound like that. And it's because it's a 90s Britpop band. Bluetones. And that song is called My Neighbour's House. I nearly included it when we did the episode on first lyrics because I just like the first lyric. My neighbour's house is burning down and I can't say why. Just like, fair enough. just like casually looking out going, oh, look at that. The house is burning down. Should we move? Oh, don't know. Why do you think that's happening? I don't know. Can't say why. But they're a band that I saw the first time. I think it was on their first album tour. And Emma and I and our friends have seen this band so many times. And every single album they did changed and it evolved, and it was really interesting. It's just unfortunate. I chose one from, I think, their last album that sounds actually much more 90s than anything else they've ever did. But they were always good. And I think for them, so this is between 93. Oh shit, 93 they started. Still going now, but now they're just kind of doing they're not releasing stuff as far as I'm aware, but they're just kind of doing that circuit. There's a horrible thing in the UK where there's a festival called Shine and other stuff where bands just come and play all their old stuff. They don't play any of the thing. My sister went to go and see Dodgy in Norwich a few weeks ago. And that troubles me, but all their releases very good. I haven't really got much more to say about them really, but the fact they evolved, I think, actually led in a long way to their gradual downward trajectory. So first time we saw them was big places like Southend, Cliffs Pavilion, Corn Exchanges, big places, and then they kind of went right down to us seeing them in like 100, 150 capacity venues. And I think it's because I think it's because they evolved, and all the people who loved the Britpop thing got jobs, got married, had children, stopped listening to music. So I think that's basically it.
I always wondered why people stopped going to gigs and stuff like that.
It's one of the things I really love about getting into the metal scene over the last few years is that there's so much more loyalty and enthusiasm. This Green Lung gig was sold out. Colchester Arts Centre sold out, and half the people there had Green Lung T-shirts on. And when they were announcing songs, bands, we're going to play this song, and there was a cheer for the song. And so, like I mean, by the loyalty, the sort of the passion and enthusiasm, and it was all age ranges. And there were some people I was wondering if this was the first time they'd left the house in a while. Actually, there's a certain type of metal fan. I dare say people look at me and think the same thing, but I don't know. My thought process is sort of ground to a halt there, really.
No, the Bluetones are an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, it gets that sort of, I guess, the same sort of thing as No Means No. They are a band that evolved, but I guess No Means No never had that. I mean, they may have had that moment in the sun in the 90s, but they certainly never signed to that major label, so they never got... I don't think they ever went massive, and they went small. And I think rather than the reasons they sort of may have quit is because they just were going, we've been doing it for 30 years. I've had enough. Let's quit touring.
I'm tired. Well, they weren't young when they started. The one of the two, so back to talking about No Means No now, that one of the brothers was just on Wikipedia, he was 25 years old in 1979. So they weren't even kind of, I mean, yes, that's young compared to an old fucker like me, but not for starting a band and touring all the time and whatever. That's not that young to still be doing it 30 years later. Incidentally, the Bluetones, the first album, massive hit, huge smash, big. You saw it everywhere at the time when there were loads of record shops. You'd see it in the window, and they went. One of the singles was number 2 on the charts, and they were big. Second album did pretty well, and you could tell the second album they'd spent. It's like they spent all the money they made on the first one making the second one because the production's incredible, and like tons of musicians involved, really, really good. But one of the things I found really interesting about them at the time is that they didn't actually fully sign to a major. They did something I wasn't aware of at the time. I didn't know it was a thing at the time, but they formed their own label and licensed themselves to A&M Records. So
right.
they there was rumors that
that's smart.
There was rumours that they'd been dropped after the third album, and they put out a press release going, "We can't be dropped. We are the record label." But who they chose to license releases to that's really smart. That is a smart way of doing it. But I think their manager was quite on it. Same manager, entire career to the band, and that's not something that you see very often. So that's just one of the cool things. I think they get lumped in with the Britpop thing, and that was only where they started. And I think they are a high quality band. Let's go for this. I say this is I enjoyed putting the clips together for this because it's real chalk and cheese.
Start to kill us now. 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 Start to kill. And it's a red today. All of the lives that you meant to stay. Don't put us to one. We live not alive. You don't tell us conviction to kill. Hit on the side, we will never fail. Stop a killing will start. Tell us to burn. Don't you get every down. Without the kill us, motherfucking now.
That's so rare that with the 30-second clip we use as the end of a song. So that's cool. It was that, Sam.
That was the Cannibal Corpse, the Cannibal and the Corpses, with Time to Kill Us Now, as you may have gathered. And that is from their album, which is originally titled Kill. And that was also, I think that's also...
Is that the album with the naked woman with some sort of alien
No,
coming out?
No. This is 2006 again, so I'm very 2006-y this episode. mid 2000s. This is an album I discovered recently, and they basically, Cannibal Corpse put together some of the earliest sort of like gnarliest death metal in the early days, and then they changed singer from this guy called Chris Barnes to
Chris Barnes is the least Cannibal Corpse sounding name.
This is Chris Barnes. Chris Barnes Cannibal.
Very British sounding name. Where are they from?
They're from. I think that's a good question. I always thought they were Florida because they were associated in some ways. They recorded in Florida because there was a producer down in Florida who did all those death metal albums at the time. He also did. He's just had a book that's come out. He also did. Some early 90s, mid 90s Napalm Death albums, which are very, very important to the Napalm Death legacy stuff. But they did 4 albums between 1990 and 1994 with this guy called Chris Barnes, and then this guy George Corpse Grinder Fisher.
See, that sounds more like a Cannibal Corpse kind of name.
Yeah, and basically he sort of they went on and they did, and this is a band that has had their ups and downs, and they are, you could sort of accuse them in a way of being like the death metal AC/DC or the death metal Cannibal, the death metal Ramones, in that they don't change sonically that much, but they've refined it. And actually, I would say, contrary to a lot of bands, what they've done is actually they started and they put this death metal sound together in the early 90s, and as the recording stuff has changed and the personnel has changed, they've actually changed up a gear and become a different kettle of fish than that they were absolutely beforehand. But what I would say is, so they had this sort of first 4 albums of like, that sort of defined the genre, particularly the gore-obsessed part of death metal, and the really dirty riffs and great riffs, like they weren't Ace Ventura, but and the lyrics were incredibly.
They were Ace Ventura, did you say?
Yeah, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
I've not seen it.
You go and watch it again, and they're famous for sort of the early 90s misogynistic song titles like Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's and awful. Sorry. Blame the Cannibal Corpse. Blame Cannibal Corpse, man.
What was the timestamp? 43:20. Okay.
And Time to Kill is a bit more subtle than that. I'm sorry, Andrew. It's quite funny though. A song that is almost 40 years, probably about 40 years old, has still the ability to offend.
Just that word.
Just the subtitle. Yeah. And then the last 2 albums, have been really good as well. And they've put out so they've had a consistency, but they've also evolved with that consistency from being like a band that is feeling out the genre and figuring out what the genre parameters are, to actually being, I would say, a fucking just brilliant death metal band that can stand up against these sort of younger bands and they're not like, not everything they do is reliant. And this is the other aspect, I guess, is you get the Rolling Stones, and as I was saying, who listened to the album from last year, but you get Cannibal Corpse and their albums stand up to other genre albums, coming out today. I would listen to that last Cannibal Corpse album, the last 2 Cannibal Corpse albums, as much as I would listen to any modern death metal album from a band that has come out in the last sort of 10 years, and it will be just as good. And that is impressive of a band who has been going again, since the late 90s, since the late 80s.
I mean, it's easy to poke fun at the Rolling Stones, but it is fun. I can remember even in the late 90s,
You poked fun at the Rolling Stones.
I can remember when they released an album, Babylon something, in the 90s, and I can remember reading in the press that they were releasing albums by that point, touring the album, but not playing songs off the album, just like playing the hit. So basically doing the same set for years. And at which point you kind of think, well, what's the point of the new albums? What's that actually doing?
Yeah, and it's and then you get like the Metallica thing, which is arguably, I think some people would argue convincingly that they haven't released anything that worthwhile since the early 90s. And you have the guitarist Kirk Hammett, the lead guitarist, going, I get so bored of playing those solos over and over again. So, when it comes to recording the new albums, I just improvise everything because I don't want to replay the same thing over and over again for the next 40 years. And I sort of listen to those and go, fair enough, they make their life. And so giving him those little spots within the, those spots where he can diverge and do his own thing within the set, must make touring life, must make those sort of a bit more interesting for him rather than having to do the exact same thing, even for the new songs again and again and again. And, so because let's face it, none of the stuff they've probably put out since the early 90s is going to be the thing that people get so angry about missing. Anything from, 1990, Black Album onwards or before is what people are going to get pissed off about not seeing stuff afterwards. And so Cannibal Corpse, to me, if I want to see Cannibal Corpse and they played stuff mostly from the last two albums, I'd be happy. I think they're great pieces of death metal.
There's one thing that really interests me about Cannibal Corpse. I know that they've been around a long time and they have earned their place as a popular band. But it made me realize there are some bands who rise to very high prominence through something that is not of their own design, other than making great music. So I talked about my daughter a lot in this episode, which she'd be really, really annoyed about probably. But we're talking about like, fuck, she's going to be listening. She might be in 30 years' time when I'm dead, in which case, woo, hello.
Trying to put together that AI dad that she now wants to spend time with.
So she we're talking about discovering music, and she and all her friends discover music through peers, although Izzy hates her peers' taste in music because they just listen to Harry Styles. But they also discover a lot of music through TikTok, because a song will start becoming mainstream on TikTok, and TikTok does this really bizarre thing. The algorithm, if you use a popular template or a popular bit of music that's being used on videos, you rank high and you get more views. So it is just fucking itself into mediocrity all the time. It's just everything's just blur. Well, we're going to reward you for doing the same thing as everyone else, which is just the worst thing ever. But I wonder how many people discover Cannibal Corpse through a video of theirs on YouTube. Have you seen the video that is allegedly Paul McCartney and Rick Rubin listening to Cannibal Corpse in the studio?
No.
You've not?
I think I might have, but I can't remember what happened to it.
Oh, it's clearly taken from some sort of documentary, and there's a mixing desk, and Rick Rubin's like bringing faders up and down, and McCartney's going, oh yeah, listen to that. Yeah, you can hear like the clicking of the drum. It's clearly from that, but the music's been replaced with Cannibal Corpse. So that's fun. But I can remember seeing it and like going, yeah, I'll watch that for a few seconds. In my life's not that valuable. I can't waste this amount of time. And then I looked, and it had millions and millions of views, and I just kind of thought, I'm really pleased for Cannibal Corpse. Do you know what I mean? I'm really pleased that their music, which is it's outsider, like that sort of death metal, it's never going to be mainstream, I don't think.
Well, you know how many albums they've sold?
Oh,
they've got a million seller.
Well, one of their albums sold 1 million copies. Oh well, I am wrong in that case. Wow,
they're like the as terms as like death metal bands go, they are like the. Well, they're probably, in a weird way, I think they're the most accessible ones because they are the most comic in a way. You get Death, which is quite technical. They get technical, and then you get Obituary, where you have to get past that the voice, or you really like the voice. Whereas
Obituary is still
Cannibal
playing like
Corpse.
tiny places. We nearly went to go and see him in Colchester last year.
Cannibal Corpse.
No, Obituary.
Obituary. Yeah, I mean, I never really got them. They're the same sort of thing, but to be, Cannibal, and I think they shared a few members with Death and Cannibal Corpse at a certain point in the early 90s. And then you had, what's it called? Like for all the misogyny and all the issues around the first few albums that Chris Barnes sort of put out, I would say, tell me he's actually, you listen to that and tell me he's actually saying anything in it. He's not, he's just going, and so one of the most remarkable things in that clip of Cannibal Corpse is that you can actually understand what the fucking guy is saying. Time to kill is now. And yeah, fair enough. And and one of the things that stood out to me is going, oh my God, this guy's such a better vocalist because he's got some diction and therefore he's communicating something rather than just being a vile human being.
I'm going to play my choice, and I'm probably not going to talk that much about it because I've kind of changed my mind. Has this ever happened to you? Kind of put forward a song, and then we get halfway through the discussion. I think, this doesn't fit, but I'm gonna play it anyway. Listen very carefully for the beginning of this because there's a bit I quite like.
Don't fuck up. Don't fuck yourself.
Do you know that?
It sounds like a blues rock band.
Yeah, it's Kyuss. I love that bit at the beginning. Don't fuck up. Don't fuck yourself. I shouldn't have chosen them, if I'm honest, because it doesn't fit. The reason I chose them, they did 3 albums, and they're incredibly consistent. I don't think there's a duff moment on any of those albums. And they did inspire, basically, were a big part of a big, massive subgenre, but never really made it that big at the time. I mean, you had, this is the time of Nirvana, not that track, because I deliberately chose a late era one. But, it's the time of Nirvana. That bass playing Scott Reeder, so that's why it sounds just so good. Still can't believe he pops up in that awful Metallica documentary as a potential bassist. Like, that would have been so strange. But I'm going to move on unless there's anything you want to say about Kyuss.
Well, no, this is the other aspect of longevity that I was sort of thinking about stuff that was made at a certain era but still hits. You sort of like. And it's dependent on who you are, and it's what you listen to, and so on and so forth. But it's a bit like the Rentals, that first Rentals sort of thing. Like that was mid-90s. Listen to it, 2024. I still like it.
That held up. When I listened to the Rentals, I thought it was contemporary. There was no way I thought it was that old.
I think what we focused on mostly at the moment has been bands that have managed to, or musicians that have managed to keep going. We're ignoring some of the next one. I think of mine is a bit more obvious, but I've gone for, the two next of my choices are pretty similar to one another in many ways in their approaches. I think to sort of what an album should be, and next album should be, whereas this was more of like. The music endures, even if like the music endures is an important aspect of like people, talk about your daughter sort of discovering bands and people sort of discovering things, and Cannibal Corpse in that way, their early stuff sort of endures because you just sort of listen to it and something that grabs, that's something that keeps going on about it. And some stuff just it was never going to translate to me, like 1980s and early 1980s American hardcore. I think from about Minor Threat I get it, but before that I don't really get it. But like they're going to be there, and they're going to be these sort of bookmarks that people come back to, and Kyuss is certainly a bookmark that people are going to come back to, and people are always going to go. It's always going to be that thing when you get a teenager who gets into heavy music, and you go, "Have you heard Kyuss?" And they're one of those bands in the same way that Cannibal Corpse is going to be like Kyuss are like I don't know, comedy terms. I'm trying to think of it. Comedy terms. Kyuss are like have you heard? I don't know. This is lazy and it doesn't work. Have you heard Red Dwarf? Have you watched Red Dwarf? And Cannibal Corpse is much more like, have you heard the really stupid? Like it's a bit more Beavis and Butthead than that.
I really like where you're going with the bookmark analogy. I think that's a really good thing.
Yes, that bit worked. The other bit worked.
Yeah, that was great. The rest of it, you just sort of. It's like you were pissing and you were hitting the center, not the center of the bowl because we don't piss that way because it splashes. You were hitting that little sweet spot in the porcelain that doesn't splash back, and then you just turned around and walked out the room while you're still pissing.
I accept that. I do that too often. It pisses my wife off.
Right, next one.
'Cause I'm never going to change a thing about you. Never ever going to change a thing about you. Just as you are.
I've never heard anything by this guy and not liked it. Who was that?
That was Bobby Wyatt and Just As You Are. Robert Wyatt for the uninitiated. Robert, who was in The Soft Machine.
Oh, right, sorry.
And he's mostly retired. He still pops up now again in other people's stuff.
Kind of pleased to find out he's still alive. I don't know why. I just sort of, some people, when you find out they're still alive, oh, that's good.
And he has since you know how I discovered him? I discovered him on a compilation a friend of mine made. Mark, the drummer from the original drummer from Godzilla Black.
Oh.
He gave me a compilation by, I think a live thing that I had done from Boredoms, who's Japanese crazy singer who's done stuff with John Zorn and stuff like that. And on that compilation there was a sped up version of Robert Wyatt's cover of Stalin Wasn't Stalin. And I just went, what the fuck's that? But it got into my head and it kept going back to it. And I just went up and I ended up looking at Robert Wyatt and became a bit obsessed. And he's someone who, he's just, every single thing he's done has been really interesting. It's not all fantastic, but it's really interesting. And sometimes it's really, I wouldn't say it's depressing. I love the innocence of his voice. It always sounds like he's coming to something anew, like the idea in the music is coming.
It's an innocence to it, like the same quality that the only Velvet Underground song that Mo Tucker sings on, After Hours. It reminds me to that sort of there's a real purity to it, sort of slightly wavering. it's not always spot on, and I don't want to say it's pitchy because that's unfair, but it's got that very gentle sort of sound. I didn't realise till I've actually started doing research before these shows, these recordings. Several interesting things. I didn't realise he was part of the Canterbury scene, but Soft Machine kind of makes sense. I didn't realise he was paraplegic.
Yeah, he fell out a window at a party, didn't he?
Fuck. I didn't realise. Yeah, that's fairly shocking, really.
He's made, if anybody has made a triumph out of, like his but his musical output since then has just got better and better and better. More interesting. Other
things are interesting because we're running a bit low on time. His father was an industrial psychologist. What is that?
He analyzes machines.
I don't know.
Where did the machinist touch you? That was inappropriate. He asked the printer.
He joined the Communist Party at a very young age, but just so much interesting stuff. He's a fascinating person to me.
He recorded the single "Stalin Wasn't Stalin," which was a song by American communists in the 1940s, as a point because he if my memory serves me correctly, he got annoyed and pissed off with the idea that the West was propagating that America essentially had won World War II, whereas actually a significant, if not the most important contribution was when the Soviet army started to actually fight back at the Battle of Stalingrad and then sort of conquered basically the entire of Eastern Europe and raped and pillaged everybody there for worse, frankly. But he, that song was like, the song was basically going, don't rewrite history to make the Americans saviors. They're not saviors. It's a funny song.
It's an interesting perspective, and one of the things that's always interested me about Robert Wyatt is how much influence he has. So I've just got to ask: are your headphones really hissing?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully, I'll edit that out. But how well supported he is, how loved Robert Wyatt is, and how well supported. So after he had his accident, Pink Floyd performed 2 benefit concerts for him. He was given a car by a supermodel called Jean Shrimpton. I don't know. Sorry, you're paralysed. Here's a car. Seems like a slightly odd one.
I can't use your legs.
Julie Christie gave him and his wife free use of a flat, which he then bought of her. And there's just a long string of stuff. Really interesting. I'm always really interested in. Lou Reed was similar. Well, I don't think people really adored Lou Reed. People just sort of acknowledged his influence. Let's play.
Lou Reed is hit and miss, I would say. That
hissing's a bit mad, isn't it? I tell you what. Let's crack on. Let's see if playing a song will help that. I've uploaded these in the wrong order, so I've just got to be careful here.
In your head, he won't deceive you or tell you the truth. Woman, he'll be no trouble. He won't write you letters full of excuses. Come on, believe you have one in a million.
That was Crowded House, and I chose them because Neil Finn, the singer of Crowded House, he initially joined Split Enz in the 70s, a New Zealand band formed by his brother, and completely turned around their output, made it even more poppy, but very accessible. But having played that after Robert Wyatt, I can sort of go, there's a strong Robert Wyatt influence in there, isn't there?
I was thinking John Lennon.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
I was thinking more the swing of it.
Woman.
It's a lovely song, actually. It's about my interpretation of it is that it's a friend falling in love with it's a friend talking about 2 other friends that have fallen in love, but they didn't know each other, and it's just him saying, look, no, you got a good one there. He'll look after you. I've known him a long time, and he'll be a good person for you. That's it. I'm going to have to move on because there's all kinds of crazy technical stuff going on here. So I'm going to move on to your next choice, which I don't think I was surprised you picked.
I've seen a hand, I've seen a vision. It was reaching through the clouds to risk a dream. The shadow crossed the sky and it crushed it to the ground just like a beast. The old man's back again.
I love how that bass is far too fucking loud in the mix. It's like way too loud, but it sounds absolutely brilliant. You hear all the little clanks and all the little changes in the fingering. Changes in the fingering. Absolutely wonderful.
Everybody likes a bit of changing in the fingering, don't they?
Who was that?
That was the Scott Walkers.
Mm-hmm.
Scott and the Walkers with Change is Gonna Come? No, that's not the song title. The Old Man's Back Again. And it's chosen because, if you want an emphasis on how to transition from a pop artist to artist, full stop, Scott Walker is a pretty extraordinary example. And his output, was... I would, it's not all genius. No one's output is all genius, but he made interesting music from the first until the last. And,
Yeah, he was one of the deaths that I just kind of, oh, shit. Some people I'm sort of like...
got a bit duller.
Yeah. Some people like Dwayne Eddy died today. Some people like that, I'm like, well, first of all, shit, he's still alive, because that was a long time ago that he was like massive. But I'm like, no, yeah, it's always sad. But Scott Walker was a bit like Bowie. It was like, oh, it's just the world's got a little less sunshine in it, kind of.
Yeah, there's a little less. There's a few things, a few fewer things to look forward to.
The thing, so going back to the whole point of this episode, is that bands or musicians that go on for a long, long time and don't become wank. And Scott Walker absolutely did not. If anything, he went the other way. He got more and more extreme the older he got. Didn't he do an album with Sunno?
Yeah, they couldn't fit all the amps into his home studio.
Really?
That's the story.
But one of the things that a friend of mine said about Bowie's last album when it came out, he said he'd finally managed to become Scott Walker. And if this friend's opinion is that if you look back over a lot of Bowie's back catalogue, he was trying to be Scott Walker, but not quite getting there. Which I'm not sure I agree with. I don't know enough about Scott Walker or Bowie.
I think Bowie's an interesting one because I think he had so many ups and downs, but everybody seems to sort of be very disparaging about him in the 60s, and then he becomes this genius in the 70s, cocaine fueled one who can't do any wrong for almost the entire period of the 70s, and then sort of his star wanes sort of the 80s and 90s, and then he has these two these two sort of surprise albums, like and then Black Star. I don't know. I don't see. I see that he maybe have embraced more of a Scott Walkerish approach to producing music by the last album, but there's certainly, I don't think the next day, the second last album is very Scott Walker at all. It's a very singer-songwriter-y album, I think.
I'm not going to reveal who it was, but it's a really good friend of mine, and your opinions and his opinions are always opposite sides.
This is the same, yeah.
Yeah. Same person. Right, I'm going to rock on and play my last choice. Fucking delivery, that voice, actually gives me shivers.
Chorus, I mean, the whole fucking song. That is to me one of the greatest. That's against me.
It's against me with Rebecca.
Yeah, and shout out to Inge Jansson who was the bassist on that track.
Oh, beautiful. Just wonderful bass playing. Really busy, but really cool.
Wandering, but really sort of like, you think, oh, is he going a bit too fast for himself? But no, he sounds like he's in control of everything. It's like a tiny, tiny guy, like 5'2" or something, which must be awful in Sweden. But 5'2" with a massive Rickenbacker, and he's just playing the shit out of it. What a cool guy!
I loved seeing him when he was in the band. He was such a joy to watch. Just like it's the same thing when you see a drummer who's really into what they're doing. It's just a joy to watch. And he looked like he was going, wow, look at this bass. Isn't it shiny? Look, look what my fingers can do. This is so fucking brilliant. Woo-hoo-hoo. I'm in a band. Look all these people watching. Wow, this song's really cool. Just wonderful energy.
That song, But to me, I love that last Against Me album. And because I think, I've said this before, I think it was just them sort of like chilling out a little bit after the really heavy shit around
Just
losing
Warfare
the major
Blues.
label. I think Laura Jane Grace's whole sort of transition stuff coming out into the press, as well as
I think she owned it. I really do.
Oh no, I think she owned it, but I can't. I can't imagine that. There's an aspect. The way I think about it is that there's an aspect of like, as a straight person, you never have to come out. As a cis straight person, you never have to come out. Everybody else, as a cis straight man, basically don't know the problems that people have to go through. And to come out and go into publicity like that and be not the first, but one of the most high profile of that, particularly in the modern age, has got to be, something else. And to go through. And that album and that song particularly is just going, yeah, fuck it, let's have fun. Let's play a good one. Let's make everybody feel good about life again.
I initially chose that because it's got so much of James on it. So the guitarist doing backing work, because I love hearing his voice and stuff. But it also makes me smile it's nice to see my friend who's been struggling is clearly now in a better place kind of way, because Laura Jane's emphasis on some of the words, let me just play it again, and like the emphasis, it ramps up really, really quick. Actually, we haven't got time to play it again, but there's a bit, the lyric, I can be gone when you want to be gone. And then it goes, I can come when you want me to come. But she goes, I can come when you want me to come. It's like, oh, look what I got here again. Not the clicks as well. I love that. Just want to grab you by the skull, and it's so. It's surprising how many of these episodes end up with us just raving about Against Me, but the lyricism.
Go for it.
No, just the lyricism of like being so enamored with someone, you just want to grab you by the skull and kiss you. Like, what a lovely, meaningful thing to say.
But also, I was listening to the lead guitar on that, and I don't think their lead guitar. They're not great. Like amazing, like lead writers. I don't think
it's not a shredder, James, is he?
James, no. But also, like the leads are a bit like they're never great in Against Me. I don't think, but that lead is probably one of their best, and also the tone of the guitar is really nice, because when they're leaving it, you can just hear it starting to ring out into feedback, and it's just this really nice sort of like, you want to hear that feedback sort of coming. I want to hear that feedback coming in. I wish they had done a Misfits type on American Psycho and Famous Monsters. There's a sort of feedback wailing through the entire production of that album, and it's one of my favorite sounds.
Geez, Americhain did it first. Their feedback's not like a wailing. It's like it's a bit much. We need to move on to letters. We have letters. So first of all, Matthew Burrows, who I'm reasonably confident will be listening. I didn't tell him why I was asking him, I just said, he said, I think a good episode would be, this is just on Facebook messaging, I think it would be a good one to do, bands with longevity whilst not becoming wank. And I just said, who would you choose? And then he went, Dylan, but he's shit now, but he is 207 years old. That's fair enough. But he did this like mental dump, which I'm just going to try and hammer through because I think it was his idea, so I think we want to air his thoughts. PJ Harvey was brilliant, but not my thing anymore. That's an interesting topic in its own right. Jacob's Mouse didn't sully their name, but they quit too early. Jacob's Mouse were a local band who like suddenly were on the verge of getting massive. Chemical Brothers, Slits. He says Sleater Kinney. The sound has changed, but I still like them. But they lose points because they insist on not having a bass player. Why do bands do this? And he then lists some local bands who I'm not going to name because there's 3 local bands who have done quite well but don't have a bass player. Mudhoney still doing great stuff. Prodigy still releasing good albums but not developing. So Kylie Minogue. And then he goes, "Oh, Jesus, American." This is messages over like several days, but it comes down to 4. And if he had to pick 4, it'd be Chemical Brothers, Jesus and Mary Chain, Kylie Minogue, Bob Dylan. I nearly chose Jesus and Mary Chain, but I don't know their new album well enough, so I didn't. And then he asked me why I'm called Andrew Laws and Andrew Culture, but that's for another time. Next one isn't really... so thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate that.
I always thought the Andrew Laws thing was that your obsession with Judge Dredd.
What? Like I am the law. Do you know what? There's a joke that I often use if I have to reach for something or somebody, because I'm tall, like if I'm if somebody asked me to get something off a high shelf, I said, the long arm of the laws. No one ever laughs. No, that is my real name. Andrew Culture's just in Ipswich. Everyone sort of calls each other by the name, half by the name of the band, and it's like having a name and an address in one thing. And I was in a band called Junk Culture, so I was Andrew Culture. And when the internet started,
Ramones thing. It's the Ramones influence, isn't it?
Oh yeah, of course. It's that as well. But when the internet started, I was incredibly wary of using my real name on the internet. So I just started using Andrew Culture, and I've written books under that name and all sorts of stuff. So I
think it's a cool.
I've got several friends locally, really good friends, who just call me Culture. Like almost like a public schoolboy thing where
Culture.
Yeah, he called me by the second Culture. Cool. And
stop doing that. Stop poking that Culture.
The next
put your willy away.
Message isn't really a message. Isn't really an email or a message. It's just one of the clips from the last episode we did, and we played Hers. And it's just from Dan Callis, who is an occasional co-host on this. And he just, I can't really say, I'll have to say it how I think it was written. Hers! So I just thought, you don't need to say anything else. That sums up the way he wrote it. Just sums up, like, that's like excitement, recognition, agreement. It's like so many things just by saying Hers! So yeah, nice one, Dan. And then we had a message from Stuart Bowditch, who's been on this before, and he'll probably be a co-host at some point in the future if you can't make it.
When I go on holiday again.
But I want to read it because I thought you might enjoy it. He says, "Morning. I was listening to your podcast on the way to work, and a couple of things about cattle decapitation. There is only one singer, Travis Ryan, who has an incredible range of styles. Plus, the band started out having all vegan members, and their position was that if we viewed what we do to animals as if we did the same to humans, it would be horrific. So that's what all their songs are about. Plus, now also the unsustainability of the human race as a whole. One of my favourite metal bands." And he says that he then went on to say later on he's hopeful that they'll come back to the UK. So I just thought that was cool. I love the fact that we didn't really talk about the band much because that wasn't the theme, but that's too...
I would,
go on.
It's always good. I always like it when people fact check us because we're useless.
Yeah, that. But I just thought those two things that from Dan Callis and Stuart Bowditch were both people sort of going, "Oh my god, yeah, no, I love them. I really, really love them, and I really like that when it happens with a band I don't know much about." And that's one of the brilliant things about music.
I've got two cattle castle decapitation albums. I admittedly find them quite overwhelming, but they are an astonishing thing to listen. It's quite overwhelming sort of style. And the album artwork. I would definitely have a castle decapitation T-shirt if I didn't have a 4-year-old kid.
My wife, I bought I can't remember if it was a Wolfheart T-shirt that I didn't think was very extreme. They're on the sort of the safer side of extreme metal, and it shrunk because it was a shitty Fruit the Loom or something. So I gave it to my daughter when she was about 6. My wife confiscated it. I was like, "What? What's the problem?"
I had a T-shirt which was yesterday. I threw out a T-shirt which was the Moomin, who are or is it Moomin troll, who's very famous Finnish, and someone had done Doomin and given him black metal makeup, and my kid saw it and he just went, "Oh, Moomin's broken." I said,
"That is incredible! Wow."
And I went, "Do you want it?" And he really likes the Moomin. He went, "No, I don't want it."
I shouldn't have chucked that out. I think that's a brilliant T-shirt. We're going to have to go. We are like way over time. So really enjoyed this. Thanks for listening, everyone. Make sure you tell your mum about this. I've got to go and edit out the word.
What?
Right. What is this thumbs up thing that keeps appearing on the... Is that every time I say... No, it didn't happen that time.
Goodbye?
Goodbye.
I didn't. What the fuck was that? It was weird.
I don't know. Yeah, this is going to mean nothing on the podcast, but the video, the little like bubbly thumbs up thing happened. But I'm going to go, Sam. I'm going to say goodbye. Joel, say goodbye.
They're like fart bubbles.